Welcome back from the break. We now have a very special guest on the podcast, Eli Burton. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, guys. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. Yeah, we're really pumped to have you on. Eli and us at Eclipse On Tap connected via Twitter. And,
yes, we did.
Looking forward to this chat. Eli, if you don't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Eli. I am the president and founder of the Tesla Owners Club, My Tesla Adventure. And I'm also the creator of The Adventures of Starman. It's a superhero comic that documents the Falcon Heavy launch and Starman's beginning of his adventures into space.
That's
awesome.
Amazing. So I think that is probably our first question.
Yeah. I guess my first question would be, outside of the launch, what inspired you to actually create this comic and this story to tell the story of the launch and Starman then?
I will never forget the day of the launch. I stayed home from work so I could watch this in my home office and not be interrupted by any noise. And I remember the anticipation building up to the launch, right? Like we had multiple delays and we had like static fire tests and there was just this weird feeling going into this and I think Elon said it best, either this was going to be the coolest fireworks show we'd ever seen or
yes,
the most amazing moment in space history in our lifetime. And I remember watching this thing happen and literally it brought me to tears because it was the most amazing thing I had seen in my entire life. And when the scene that they showed us on the live stream, SpaceX's live stream, where Starman blasted out of the capsule, they actually had the David Bowie's Life on Mars queued up right at the chorus, ready to go for us.
Major props to them, right?
I was actually in the office, and I had it up on one of my screens on I think it was live stream on YouTube, or was it?
SpaceX's YouTube.
Yeah, so I had it streaming, and I had tears streaming down my face too. As soon as the David Bowie music kicked in, I was just like, "Oh my god, this is just too good."
Complete. There's two types of people who watch the launch. There's people who are crying, and there's liars.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
same
so
with
true.
the Eclipse.
Yeah. Same with seeing totality for the first time. It's the same type of thing where it's just this unreal event. Seeing everything, like the presentation of that launch. Even just from like the live stream, like what you're saying there, just how did they figure out how to time it just correctly with the music? It's insane. And it's just an amazing event. And we spoke with Eli a little bit before the interview even started about how pumped we were after that. And that we even did like 2 episodes that one month. And that it was just such a game-changing moment in modern space flight.
Yeah.
It was one of those moments that I think many of us felt truly proud to be human just watching that happen. But I think also symbolically, I think that was the true symbolic beginning of the next space race. And
yeah,
that's what we've said. Yeah.
Right. And I think what you guys are seeing and what we're seeing following that launch is proving that to be exactly true. I mean, I think there was we were already building up momentum towards all these launches happening, but that put it on the map in the public consciousness in a way that it's just the beginning. It's just growing. Like kids, people, adults are getting excited about space again. And that's so wonderful to see.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's incredible.
I think that's what's going to drive the next space race again, is getting people, and especially young kids and even our age, and we're in our early 30s, and it's just getting people just, I guess, engaged in it and excited about it, because it's been something that's been sort of like not really non-existent, and it doesn't really get a ton of press, and we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's a little bit of, I think, on the everyday news, there's some fireworks, and they show it for a good amount of the day anytime something like this happens, but it's not like something where it's carried on unless you have people like us that keep talking about it and keep getting people involved in it and excited about the next thing that's going to happen. So
like the three of us that were watching it with complete awe.
Yeah.
So we're happy to hear that you felt the same way we did, Eli.
Absolutely, man. And really, like what you guys are doing here, like what you're doing with the show, what I'm trying to do with Starman, what we in the space fan community are doing, it's a tremendous responsibility, because what you said is right. We've got to get, like, we grew up in a generation that either before we were born or when we were very young is when the Challenger exploded. And that pretty much stopped on a dime society's momentum towards space. And we grew up, I don't know about you, but I know for a fact you guys did, dreaming about space, but there was nothing happening. Now we've got something happening, and it's our job to get kids, get, other millennials, other even baby boomers excited about this, because public support is going to be important for us to see the mission through, for us to get to Mars, for us to explore the universe. Like, I don't know, man, it's an exciting time.
Yeah, because I think, ultimately, at least in the U.S., it kind of comes down to there is that cultural swing. There's that momentum that needs to be built. And if you look back at the Apollo missions, the momentum was absolutely in the favor of the Apollo program. And that probably played a bigger role than I think people think in getting folks to the moon.
Huge.
Just that like everybody in the country is like on board. Let's do this. And that's what it needs to be back to these days, I think.
I'm with you. And it's actually, that's a great segue into why I made a comic book. A comic book medium so well speaks to the child in all of us, but also to children. That's why the medium is a comic to tell Starman's story, because it's something that's going to be really accessible and really digestible to kids. And that's it. Like that's where the next 30 years of space lies, is them starting to believe in this while they're 4 and 5. So when they get to our age, when they're on the radio and they're doing their podcast, or whatever that looks like in 30 years, that this reached them young.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what, I guess the next question, as you spoke about the comic book. So for our listeners, Eli is the illustrator of Adventures of Starman. Eli, can you talk a little bit about your background in illustration and how you were able to, I've seen just even the preview on your website of the comic book, and it's phenomenal artwork. Have you always had the knack for illustrating, or is this something that you've, just continued to grow as you've gotten older, or maybe just expand on that a bit?
I'll need to get your guys' address off after the show, because I owe you both a couple copies as gifts. But actually, I am not the illustrator of this. So the role I have in this is I was the creator. So basically, after this launch happened and the week following the launch, it just struck me that Starman was a moment that needed to be more than a moment. It needed to be carried on. And one of my really great best friends, I'm talking about all of this, and I'm talking about how, Starman is basically a real life superhero. He's just missing his own comic universe. And he looked me dead in the face. He's like, then you need to make it. And I was like, oh my God. So I went and hired, my main partner is the artist by the name of Dash Martin. He is responsible for this absolutely gorgeous art. He's
awesome.
He's a fan of SpaceX. He follows what Elon Musk is doing. He hopes to be able to get a Tesla at some point. And through a mutual friend, I was introduced to him and shared with him my vision. And he came back with the cover art is like one of the first things he produced. And that was just a creative match made in heaven. And, since then we partnered with some other artists who've done work for Marvel and DC, and we've brought them in. They're paid to help us produce this project. But my role was the vision and creating this and, funding it and bringing it into fruition. But I'm lucky to work with very talented artists who actually produce the work itself.
Sweet.
Awesome. So the actual story of the Adventures of Starman kind of carries a truthful, like, what happened that day, and then also kind of carries on sort of a, sort of to stretch the imagination of what he might have done, or if he was actually a comic book hero. Then is that the sort of premise of the comic then?
So episode 1 is basically a pure documentary. We threw in a couple fun fan elements, and again, I can't wait for you guys to see a copy. Like, one of the fun things we have in there, which, hey, could be true, is we have Elon Musk giving Starman not a flamethrower. So we show him load it. He has to, right? So we show Elon pull a flamethrower out of a cabinet, and make a joke about how this is totally not a flamethrower and then go stash it into the Roadster. So, we did a couple fun things like that. But yeah, about 90% of the story in episode 1 is true to life, exactly what happened. It's a comic rendition documentary. Like some of the scenes actually are frame for frame verbatim from the videos we saw from Nat Geo, from the Mars episode they did on Elon and the Falcon Heavy launch, or from the live stream from SpaceX. In fact, this was pretty hilarious. I was at the boring tunnel unveiling, and one of the assistants for one of the executives there is actually one of the women who are in the Nat Geo video, and we actually have her in the comic. Well, somebody told her I was there, and she chased me down to come give me a hard time because it turns out she is a brunette. She is very brunette, but in the comic, we made the mistake of we made her a blonde.
Classic.
So I messed up. So I'm actually, and she doesn't know this yet, but I'm having, and this is a big no-no, by the way, to do in the comic world. So I probably shouldn't admit to this, but I'm going to anyway. We are going to have a single copy reprinted for her with the hair color corrected.
Oh,
there you go.
I guess that's the best way to make it up to her. You know?
Then she's happy at least.
Take care of her. Take care of one person there.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I love that, in learning a little bit more about this, a little bit more about the adventures of Starman, the whole vision behind it, and that there's all these people involved in it, and you kind of spearheading the whole idea in the first place is just the coolest. And I think it really does kind of, I don't know, it's just one of those things that makes you feel good about what's going on. I think you flip through the preview and look at what's going on with the podcast and with the comic book and all these other content creators. When we talked to Ben Pearson, he's the guy who does the Starman tracking and all this. It's cool that there's this whole community of people that's presenting this alternative way of looking at space, I think, and I'm hoping that it's effective in some capacity. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's you kind of have to. I mean, obviously, people who have a passion for this, they're going to find a way to tell the story. Like we said when we went to the Eclipse, we wanted to tell the story to everybody that we came into contact with when we came back that didn't experience the totality experience and all that. So, for especially younger kids, and then even like really anybody, to do this kind of like comic book setting where it's telling the exact story of what happened, and then some, and down the road, who knows how many episodes will happen. And then, that's exactly what we're doing here in this podcast. It's the same kind of thing. It's just more or less engage people at really any age and tell the story of the eclipse and the space in general, exploration in general. Yep. So I think we need people like you and like us and everybody out there who